We've got a great question and answer episode for you today. The main question is on kitchen pepper. That was in this last episode, a real popular question. Thanks for joining us today on Questions and Answers with James Townsend and Son. We got an amazing response out of the okra soup episode. So many comments and thumbs ups, and thank you so much for your interaction on that episode. The first question here is from that episode. Isn't okra gelatinous? If so, does it help thicken the soup without flour? This is the first time I've saw raw onion and garlic floured before sautéing. Why not add it after they soften in the fat? And would they add other vegetables? So there's kind of a combination, bunch of questions here. The first one, okra is gelatinous. Yes, if you cut those cell walls, you'll get that kind of sliminess from the okra. If you have smaller okra, you don't have as much problem with that. As he explained in the episode, and he was using small okra, so it definitely is less slimy than bigger okra. It does add to the thickening, but not as much so. So it's not quite that kind of gumbo-y. Here we go. The onion and garlic floured before sautéing. Yeah, we thought that was really interesting. But it worked out really well. And it does kind of shortcut that making the roux and everything. So I thought the process worked really well. And adding other vegetables. Yes, this kind of soup is going to have kind of seasonal vegetables added into it whenever that kind of thing is appropriate. If you got one thing and not another, you would substitute those in this kind of setting. Here's a question that came in on the steak pudding that we did quite a number of episodes ago, and he asks about boiling this. It's like, why wouldn't you boil this? In modern context, something like that pudding it is obviously something that we would today bake. But in the time period and in this particular cookbook, they boiled it. And that's what we were trying to represent here. Not what we would do today, but what they did then. And they most likely boiled it, or you put it into the recipe book with boiling it, because that's a more common tool that they had available to them at the time. Today, everybody's got an oven. In the 18th century, not everyone had an oven. So that's one of the reasons why you see these things that today we might bake, but in the time period they boiled. Here's an interesting question. This comes in on the okra soup. What a great episode. I was wondering for a while now what other foods were being prepared in the 17th and 18th century besides that of British influence, at least here in North America is what he's talking about. Was there a lot of German, Italian, and French at the time as well, influences into our cooking? And what was considered exotic at the time. So there are a lot of different influences, not just German and French, but we also, obviously, there's Dutch that goes along with the German. There's other European influences that are coming in there. We have the enslaved foods and the African influence that comes in. We also have the North American Indian influences in our foods, as well as other ones. But again, at different times, depending on what the real needs are of the particular people at that location, sometimes they meld with those other cultures, sometimes they don't. So it's a very complex question and can be difficult to answer, but there are a lot of different influences going on here in North American food cuisine in the 18th and 17th, 18th, even the 19th century. Here's another really good question on the okra soup. How did these recipes survive? And he's specifically talking about these recipes of the enslaved population here. Were they recorded in period cookbooks, or is this a reconstruction based on other evidence? Wow, this is an excellent question, and it can be very difficult. These recipes were not recorded in the time period in recipe cookbooks. In fact, there's very little cookbook evidence from the 18th century and North America specifically. That's why we do so many things from English cookbooks, that they recorded those things. So when you're looking at influences and recipes like this, you really have to put these things together out of bits of evidence that you find in certain places, what was available to them. Looking even like this okra one. where are the references where okra actually shows up? It doesn't show up in the cookbooks, but it certainly shows up in people talking about planting it and selling it or whatever. So we have to put together a lot of evidence to be able to understand or at least get a glimpse of what's happening with history. And that's one of the challenges about understanding North American cuisine at all, just like the last question where we have these other cultures influencing and coming together. How much did they blend in together, and how much did they not blend in together? We really have to look through a lot of different kinds of documentation to find that, because you're not going to find it in the cookbooks. Here's a quick question that showed up on the okra soup episode. This one is, wow, did he shove cloves into the onion? I have never seen or even thought of that before. Cloves being put into onions and then put into the sauces is a very common thing that you'll find in 18th century English cookbooks. Even apparently you'll find them in the late 17th century cookbooks, and it's a technique that was borrowed from the French. So that's something that comes out of French cuisine, gets put into the English cuisine, and is just such a common and very interesting way. It lets you flavor that sauce or that soup that you're doing, and then take that out later on in the process. And it all comes out in one chunk, so it's much easier. So here is the main question. I brought Kevin in for this one because he's done most of the research on this. Kitchen pepper, what is that? And we had that question over and over. Kevin, tell us about kitchen pepper.
Well, kitchen pepper finds its roots actually back in the medieval kitchen. Mm-hmm. There's references to powder blanc, powder douce, powder fort or forte, mm-hmm. Sweet powders, savory powders. By the end of the 17th century, you start seeing these develop a little more.
But what are they, Kevin?
Oh well, they're mixes. They're mixes of spices, and probably for convenience purposes. I found 6, 7, 8 different recipes for kitchen pepper and savory powders. And a lot of them, especially in the 18th century, they seem to be fairly similar. Ginger, cinnamon, black powder, nutmeg.
Black pepper, not black powder.
Black pepper.
So you want an explosive powder there.
By the 18th century, they seem to take similar forms. Mm-hmm. Ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, nutmeg, allspice, cloves. Some of them had salt, some of them didn't. 19th century, they developed a little more. Cayenne was added to it. I found one with mustard, a couple with even dried lemon peel included in it. But it was a way of these spices were used so often that they would just mix them together into these.
They're just missing nutmeg.
18th century nutmeg.
There we go, nutmeg. Yeah. So they had nutmeg.
So yes. So it was just a way of mixing these flavors together.
I think it's interesting that as we do the digging, and I did some, and you'll find it's like you find the medieval reference, and then you see them in the late 18th century. They kind of disappear for a while, at least in references in the cookbooks.
Right.
And then they pop back in.
Well, Anne Wilson in Food and Drink in Britain, she mentions a recipe from 1682. Okay. And it was that recipe that really kind of takes on this ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, nutmeg,
the
form.
Standard one,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because earlier on there were different kinds of powders.
Right.
It was like sweet versus salty, but by the 18th century it sort of turns into the same for everything, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think it's interesting the idea that some of these you would find at the store, at the apothecary. They would be prepackaged, mm-hmm. and then maybe you had your own.
Right.
It's like, this is my special kitchen pepper.
Yeah, and you find some variations in the English cookbooks too. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Fraser's mixture was different from Mrs. Rundell's mixture, and so.
Do you think it was partially here? I mean, there have been different things when you're reading and you're looking at that cooking in the 18th and 19th century, and apparently there were a lot of households where the cooks weren't very good at doing the cooking, and this would be a way to shortcut that. I don't know how to season this. Oh, you just put that in there.
That's very possible. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Kevin, for bringing
yeah.
us kitchen pepper. That is it's one of those little topics that you just kind of a nugget that you run by, but if you keep digging and digging, it just keeps going. There's a lot to learn, even about kitchen pepper. Kevin's got a PDF, and we will make a little article on savoring the past. You can go there and check that out.
All right.
If you enjoyed the Michael Twitty episode, you're going to love the next 3 coming up. He continues to be our guest in the next 3 episodes. We shot those all while we were at Gunston Hall. They were so wonderful there and helpful. So I really want to thank everyone at Gunston Hall. And of course, Michael Twitty for his help with those episodes, all his work that he did and showing us these amazing recipes. And we've got lots more exciting stuff coming up after those episodes. We'll have a couple of standard cooking episodes, and we're going out to, we've already scheduled 2 more historic sites that we're going to be visiting this spring. So we've got a lot on our plate, as well as coming out with a new catalog, and we're working on a new website. So, wow, a lot of stuff happening here at James Townsend and Son. I want to thank you for your amazing support of what we do on the channel, with the thumbs ups and watching the videos and the great comments and the wonderful questions, and the folks who support us on Patreon. I really want to thank you for that. That really helps us continue to do what we do, as well as those folks that go to our website and buy the incredible products like clothing and cooking equipment. So thank you for all you do, and thanks for watching.